Its inception was 1904, and that's a very, very long time ago. New York City subway system is one of the oldest systems in the world. It has 472 stations. It's open 24/7, 365 days a year, and I discovered recently the reason that it never stops, and maybe the term New York City never sleeps, is because they don't have space to park their trains. So they just keep it going all the time. After you watch this video, you will understand how to navigate the New York City subway station with confidence. Don't be afraid to ask a New Yorker for directions because, truth, New Yorkers, they love to share their opinions, and they also love to tell you where to go. Hi, my name is Geraldine, and I've been taking the subway since I was 11 years old. It was mainly built by Italians, Irish, and African Americans. It was an extremely dangerous, high-risk job that the toughest men took it on to build the New York City subway system, and I really feel that this is what gives New York City its tough, gritty attitude, because that shapes the culture and diversity of New York City. 3 things that you really need to know in order to understand the New York City subway system: know where you are, know where you're going, and know how you're going to get there. This video will also include some more advanced nuances so that you can use the subway like a local. Become familiar with the geography. Even if you're just staying on the island of Manhattan, it would be good to know. Everyone wants to just come to Manhattan because it's the creme de la creme, right? But one of the things that's important to keep in mind is that Manhattan is it's a sliver of what's going on in New York City. And it's kind of like having a myopic view of the train system when you're just looking at Manhattan. There are 5 boroughs in New York City: Queens, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, and we do include Staten Island. To our New York City subway station, but you can transfer to their system using the Metro or the Omni card. To understand how the system works, have like a bird's eye perspective. Understand that when it says you are on a Bronx-bound train, that the next stop is not necessarily Bronx, right? It's just going, that's the destination. That's the ultimate destination. The 4, 5, and 6, and the 1, 2, and 3, they're delineated, like they're distinctive from each other because they're either local or express, or they're going in different directions eventually. So it might not make sense in Manhattan itself, but if you look just a little bit beyond where you're going in Manhattan, you will see that the 2 will split off and go in a different direction than the 3. Just take a look, because that'll make it clear to you why there are so many different trains. How to tell where you are. Notice the street numbers. A really basic way of telling where you are is that the streets are numbered. So as the streets go 23, 24, 25, you're going uptown, etc. Right? So that's one way of telling. The odd streets go west and the even ones go east. You'll need to know where north and south are so that you can identify which way is uptown and downtown. Like 2nd Avenue goes down, Lexington goes down, First goes up, 3rd goes up. You'll start to get the hang of it. The orientation of the streets is really pretty important. So like you could go up to the train and read the outside of the train and it will say uptown or downtown. But it is really good to know how to tell where you are. The other thing to do, and you might not pick this up right away, but start to notice where the landmarks are, right? If you're on 7th Avenue, you can see straight down to World Trade Center. If you're on 6th Avenue, you'll probably catch a view of Macy's or the Empire State Building. If you're in the area of the Chrysler Building, These are all like spectacular buildings, and they really serve as landmarks. Like there's the Empire State Building. I know I'm in Midtown, right? There's the building with the Hudson Yard. Oh, also, there's that weird pencil-shaped building near the US. When you're looking at the map of Manhattan, a great thing to keep in mind is where Central Park is. It's smack in the middle, it's a rectangle, and if you use that as a landmark, so everything below Central Park is like downtown, Midtown downtown, and everything above would be like north of 59th Street, would be considered Upper Manhattan. Always know where you're going. Identify what train you're trying to get, and that will save you so much heartache and time. So the apps, it's a personal preference. I like Apple Map. It works really well. It shows the ferry, it shows all the options, it shows like preference, walking more, stuff like that. So a lot of people like City Mapper. It might be good for other cities as well. It's very simple to use, it's easy to navigate. I also recommend the MTA app because it will have live updates. And also, FYI, they're documented. All the delays are documented. So if you're trying to use that as an excuse to be late for work, it won't work because they can just request the time. Sorry. You can use your credit card or cash, and you'll have the option to purchase a Metro card and add money to that, or you can get a single use card. If you're getting the single use, it's a little bit extra. It's $3.25, where normally the fare is $2.90. So if you plan on using it more than once, just get the Metro card. It's $1. And incredibly, when you put cash into the machine, it will give you change. These two take cash, and this one over here, the small one, is for credit and ATM only. And if you've forgotten how much you have on your Metro card, you can check the amount on this handy machine, which you'll often find near the cash machines or in random stations around the city. If you're traveling from out of town and you're at the machine and purchasing a Metro card, and it asks you for your zip, you can put in 99999. That will work because other countries have longer zip codes, so that should get you by. If you're traveling with a group, you can pass your card within the group. The Omni system will eventually replace the Metro card. So the sooner you get on board, the better. It's $2.90 per ride. They're transferable, so you can jump on the bus. The Omni system was designed to be a contactless form of payment for the MTA and New York City Metro system. So the cool thing is that you can use your credit card, you can use your phone, or you can purchase a card similar to the Metro card, but it's an Omni card. Eventually, you'll have an account that connects all of it, and you can see the back end. You can set up Apple Pay on your phone, and the first tap will begin the 7-day period. There's something called fare capping. The fare capping will kick in after you pay for 12 rides during a 7-day period, and after that, the rides are free. So that is a good thing if you're doing a lot of getting around in a 7-day period. When you look at the subway map, you're looking at north and south, otherwise known as uptown and downtown. There are 2 train lines that extend all the way from one end of Manhattan straight up to the other end of Manhattan, and those are the 123 and the 456. Now, the 123 does a little bit of a shift at Columbus Circle, but the reason I mentioned these 2 trains is that they go from one end all the way up to the other end, whereas the A, C, and E, even though it goes straight up, it only starts at 14th Street. And so it looks like hardly anything when you're looking at the map and it looks really small. But when you're on 14th Street and you're looking for that A, C, and E and you can't find it, I got pickpocketed once on the A train. It was during the 70s, but it's never been like my favorite train. And it doesn't like bring me where I want to go. It's just not one that I use a lot. I will get back to the other train lines at the end of the video. How do you tell the difference between a local versus express? You will see the black dots are local and the white dots are express. Interestingly, this is a side note, but I never used that growing up. I think I just had it committed to memory, which stops were local and which stops were express. Dot, stop, no dot, no stop. So that was the phrase that was used. And it's actually not like a white dot. It's, I mean, now it might be white, but like it was clear. The express trains do stop there, but the local doesn't. So it is a little confusing. But that was the original term. Even when I would go other places in New York City, I would always look for what train I was going to transfer to. So I would notice the express stops, and then I would look for the train. 4 or 5 are their express trains, and the 6 is local, for example. So these distinctions will often indicate local or express routes. When you're outside, you can tell that the local stations are smaller, and the express train stations are usually much bigger. But there are some exceptions to the rule, of course. And some of those are like 68th Street or 96th Street, where you enter in and they have the option of both uptown and downtown. So they're sort of like slightly expanded stations, but they're not full on express stops where they have like all the different transfer options. That's one way of thinking about it. There are several ways of getting across town. I'm going to start with the 3 basic ones, and those are the shuttle, the 7 train. Those are both on 42nd. And then on 14th Street, the L train. And later in this video, I'm going to show you the other ways to get across town using the subway. I'll just say that the buses are a great option, especially when you get uptown and there are no options for crossing town. And it's a beautiful ride across town. Going out of the 96th Street, and I'm going to transfer and here's the bus. So I'm waiting for the bus at 96th Street. I just got off the train. I'm going to use my transfer, and here it is now. Okay, the reason it's confusing for people is that they assume that all of the same colored trains are going to the same destination. And that's not true. So within the colors, they have nuance. They have like more specific services, local, express, and different destinations. You'll never hear a local saying, oh, take the yellow train or take the yellow trains, because it's not specific enough to where you're going. So the short story is that there were 3 private companies, the IRT, the BMT, and the IND. They each had a different system. Imagine how confusing that was. Well, eventually the city took over, and then the state took over and made it one unified system called the MTA. At that point, a unification of all 3 systems was called for, and they found themselves with a shitload of problems and like just a mess of different signages, systems, different sized cars, different sized track, different sized trains, different length trains, different sized stations, and different systems for advising people on how to use the subway. They were faced with the challenges of making the directions uniform, trying to integrate all of the different stations and trains and infrastructure. And they were also faced with marketing and making sure that people had clear directions. So it was a lot. And considering where they came from and the massive integration that had to take place in order to make it all uniform, I think they did pretty well. But a designer came in and instead of doing roots, different colors for each roots, they settled on what they call a trunk solution, which sort of nods at the original three companies. How we use this color system now is that I feel like for me, how I use it is really more like an internal dialogue. Like if I'm taking the JMZ, I know that I'm going to a specific part of Brooklyn, Bushwick, Williamsburg. And then if I know I'm taking the N or the R, I'm going to Queens. It does allow you to make quick decisions. You go one step further and refine that decision into what train you're taking. So all that to say, when you're talking about the train, you still need to be specific about what train because that'll get you really close to your stop. And you also don't want to go into another direction completely. If you think about how the service lines are laid out, it makes much more sense to think about the colors. So they actually stretch from, let's say we're talking about the F. That goes from Queens, from Forest Hills, all the way into Manhattan, through Manhattan, and over into Brooklyn. Many of the trains do that. And if you understand that the services, they touch on many different areas throughout their service. If you're finding value from this content, please consider subscribing. It really helps my channel grow. I appreciate it. There are many, many resources. Once you get in the train, there's maps everywhere. There's maps on each car. There's maps usually on the platform stations. There's a map where you purchase your card. Take a minute to orient yourself with the map. And every time you have somewhere new to go up to the map and take a look and see, just familiarize yourself with what other trains are going to be around so that when you see these other trains, you don't get confused. You're like, okay, that's that other train. And even though it's the same color, within that color, I'm looking for my train, my specific train, right? If you have a scooter or wheelchair or stroller, or if you have big packages, bikes, I don't know, if you twisted your ankle and you really don't feel like going on the stairs, then there's an elevator option for you. So keep that in mind. I feel like the elevator system has improved so greatly, even from the time that I had small children. There has been so many like upgrades and additions. Unfortunately, it doesn't really smell that great. That is one of my major complaints about the MTA system. It's not that clean and it's pretty smelly. And sometimes there's rats. But besides that, they have really put some effort into the elevator system. And you can even track, you can get like a text sent to you. I'm going to put a link below so you can understand where the stations are. But there's quite a few stations. Do a whole video just about the boroughs and how to navigate Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx. I don't go to the Bronx that often, but I could. And I could do maybe Staten Island. I don't really go to Staten Island that much, but like hardly ever, like maybe once or twice. But I could do a whole nother video just on how to navigate the boroughs. But I will mention that the 7 train is an express that shoots right out from the Hudson Yard through Queens, and that's a great option. The G train goes from Brooklyn to Queens, and When it's running on time, it's a great option. It is a little bit slow, but maybe that's changed. I used to take it and it was like, I nicknamed it the underground train because it took so dang long. The middle tracks were really designed to have those express trains running through them, and they up their services during rush hour. You notice that there are a couple of diamonds that have remained from one of the iterations, and those still are express. Those indicates express services on those trains. There's what to expect, and then there's the reality of what you get. So a lot of times they had to rework stations, and the local will not be on the same level as the express, or the two trains going in opposite directions will be right across from each other when you're expecting to have the local and the express right across from each other. Yeah. Train companies is that the stations are not all uniform, and it causes some decision fatigue because you can get used to one way the trains are, but then you go to another station and they're completely different, and they're located in different areas in different directions, and sometimes they're going the same direction. So that can be a source of confusion. I would say just really read the signs. They're all marked very clearly. Well, 14th Street and 42nd Street are two stations where the train is directly across the station. So if there's a chance to switch to either an express or local, that would be a really easy, great place to do it, because you can just see, oh, the train's right there. Let me just hop on the next train. However, if there are other places like 59th Street or 96th Street or 86th Street where you have to go up or down level to connect to your train, then you might not want to switch. The reality of using the train after you realize all of this infrastructure had to be reconfigured and reworked. Another way of getting across town, depending on where you're going. So these are special trains, on the Upper East Side, 110th Street, around there, like the Apollo Theater, the Graffiti Hall of Fame. Just like there's a bunch of good stuff over there. And jump on that 2 and 3, take that down. It'll bring you all the way to the West Village. How cool is that? How cool is that? Train all the way. Okay. Another example of this is use the F train, and then it will bring you to a different part of town that is otherwise really hard to get to. These are very useful, and they can bring you really close to where you want to go. Just think of them as an alternate way of getting across town, depending on what part of town you're in. Like if you're going to the Museum of Natural History, the B is, a good train to get because it lets you off right there. So keep this in mind. MTA on your computer, and you can click on each letter, which I think is so cool, and you can see the live updates, or like if you're about to leave and you just want to check and see that the train that you're catching is in service for whatever reason, and then you can make alternate plans before you even leave your house. So that is a cool tip. So now that you know the system really well, you can use it to suit your needs despite all of its quirks. One more tip is just to leave a little bit of extra time. It takes time to learn this very complex system and have fun. Don't worry, there's always a way to self-correct in case you do make a mistake. And check out my next video on the top mistakes that people make, including locals. 3.6 million people ride the subway every day. So check the service updates and stay on top of your game. And my other tip is be flexible. Things are always changing. There are so many stations. They often have to take those trains and service them. Guys, did you hear that? Okay, well, if not, there will be signs posted around the platform with service updates. They often have to take those trains and service them, along with the occasional jumper. There might be a sick passenger or someone pulled the emergency brake. So for all of these reasons, you might know what your options are, so that if you find yourself without a train option, that you know what the other options are. Check out my next video about all the other transportation modes that you can integrate and use with the New York City subway system.